Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show, while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, called conservative media has betrayed their principles. It's something that has become a cornerstone of this 2016 presidential election cycle. In fact, it's become such a cornerstone that I've nicknamed this the election cycle of betrayal. Because we've seen it. We've seen betrayal at every turn, every corner, every facet, and it's just wholly unacceptable. But one of the worst offenders in this regard is Breitbart News. You know, they have fawned over Trump throughout the entire 2016 presidential election cycle. They have sacrificed their credibility. They have fallen by the wayside to just sure inaccuracy and going out of their way to be deceitful. They have tried to create a false narrative, a false perception for the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around vulgarian Donald J. Trump, who also happens to go by on any day two alter egos, that of John Barron and John Miller. So we see that they have sold their soul for that. And for what? Ratings? For doing better with the population? It's just beyond me. But the fact of the matter is that throughout this entire 2016 presidential election cycle, they have done this. Of course, it goes against the warnings that Andrew Breitbart himself made with respect to Trump shortly before Breitbart's death. I believe it was back in 2012. I think it was about that time anyway.
Around that time, yeah.
So how do we explain this drastic shift away from the principles of the organization's namesake? Well, again, it has to come down to this idea that they want to have a corner over the market. And not just that, it's that they've also saw this as an opportunity to just enrich themselves at the expense of their listeners, at the expense of their consumers. And I don't know about you, but for me, I've never thought that that made much business sense. I never thought that that was a good idea or a good way to boost your business and to make your business do well. Instead, I've always seen that as a way of alienating your customer base. And in this line of work, you really can't afford to do that. You just can't.
Well, no, what it is they're actually creating problems that, well, I'll give you an example. The media is on this huge hype. They've gotten everybody believing now that Trump has to be elected because if not, we're going to have Hillary and we're going to have 2, maybe 3, maybe even the whole entire Supreme Court dismantled and leftist liberal judges appointed. Again, this is another false narrative that the media has put out. They've latched on to, loaded up all the little silver shiny bigly spoons for the people to just open their gaping maws of a mouth to just swallow it whole. I don't understand it. Why? Again, is it because of ratings? Is it because they want to be popular? Do they want to jump on the bandwagon and say, well, everybody else is jumping on the quaff wagon, the quaff train, so why don't we? Why don't people just pull their heads out of their posteriors, learn to think for themselves, and challenge things and just say, no?
It's because they have allowed themselves to be convinced that the mafioso quafioso has their best interests in mind and at heart. But he never has. That's never been the design of Trump. Think about the imaging that he does, because that's the one thing he is good at. He's a marketeer.
Mm-hmm.
And so his image has always been triumphing over everything else, stepping on people, creating ostentatious luxury where it doesn't even necessarily exist. It's about building his brand up at the expense of anyone and everyone else. And of course, that's not a good position to find oneself in, and it's certainly not a stable platform from which to build your business and the way to have a more successful business. And if you recall, there were some people that had done a study and had basically examined Trump's finances, his net worth, for as much as it could be assumed that we know what he has. And they found that he would have done better off just investing that $1 million that his father gave him. He would have had more money in the long run than what he's had with all of these failed businesses, with all of this just attempting to stoke his ego and to build this brand at the expense of his clientele and consumer base. And of course, that just shows that he's not interested in being truthful. He's not interested in being honest. He's not interested in having anyone else do well. And so when you see what he's done throughout the vast majority of his 70 years spent on God's green earth, it's been about himself. Why would he just suddenly overnight change? People don't just magically change overnight. And that's something that we have warned about on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. We've been warning about Trump for nearly a year now. And again, almost like near prophecy, he is falling into the traps that we've warned about. He's doing the very things that we have warned, and it is just growing exponentially worse with each passing day, and as we get ever closer to that general election cycle, which is slated for later this November. And really, these people that are his most vocal and ardent acolytes and supporters, the Trumpansies, the Trumpvidians, they don't want to listen to truth. They suffer from that acute ostrich syndrome where they shove their heads up their posteriors as opposed to the sand. But again, that's not good in any line or walk of life. And it's not good for their viewpoint or for the viewpoint of anyone else.
Well, it's almost kind of like they have this Trump-Vidian tabernacle choir, with the whole mantra, from Russia with man love. That whole thing, from Russia with man love, that type of thing. It's just kind of like, why? I don't get it. I don't understand it. And furthermore, Randy, what was it, yesterday or the day before? I came across this article. We came across this article regarding Trump's whole purpose of even jumping into this is to intentionally lose it. Why? To increase his brand, his image. And that's what it is. That's all Trump has ever been about, is branding, putting his name on things so that he can give some kind of false perception that he owns something. We know that all of his properties, these hotels that are his name is affixed to, we know he doesn't own them. It's ties to the Russian mafia that own them. It's ties to all these Russian real estate investors, many of which have come under international scrutiny and indictment and charges. All he simply does is, well, I'll lease my name to you. You put your name up there, it'd be bigly. If you can have some kind of like coif-like locks, flapping over my name like flags in the breeze, it'd be great. It'd be huge. Huge. I tell you, it'd be fantastic. Again, I promise you. Just stop with it already. Just stop.
Well, with respect to Breitbart, the answer that we can find with their betrayal is that it can be found in one of the most recent developments in the Trump camp. Breitbart's Stephen K. Bannon has been hired on to help run the Trump campaign. This further demonstrates just how intertwined Breitbart media and the Trump campaign has become. Recall that we said on previous episodes that Trump had essentially bought off Breitbart News.
Yep.
Well, now we have
proof.
Yes, this is unequivocal proof that they are so intertwined that you can't take them apart, that you can't get them to separate themselves. It's as though they are conjoined Siamese twins, where their lifeblood is now dependent upon each other. And this goes down to another warning sign that we need to to offer up, and one that is congruous with the previous warning signs that we've given over the course of this last year. And it's this. Those media institutions like Lush Bimbo and Trump Bart News and all of the others that have so connected themselves with the mafioso quafioso, when his campaign collapses, as it's already started to, they are not going to be able to find solace or a ready and reticent audience to just come back to, because the American people aren't going to put up with that. Only the most rabid Trumpidians, the Trumpanzees, will come out and accept them. But that's not going to be enough to keep your media platform going. That's not going to be enough to keep the bills paid and to put dinner on the table every night. And so they're going to collapse. They're going to collapse, and it is their own damn fault. There will be no sympathy. You find sympathy between SH something and empathy.
Well, that's good news for us, because see, we have always been consistent in what we've said. We've put out the facts. We've never deviated from that. We've backed up everything that we've said. And coming up next month, Randy, on the 11th, marks our 1-year anniversary of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And for an entire year, we have said Trump is bad news. He has caused people to abandon their principles. They've moved away from it. They've jumped onto this bandwagon of, I'm going to just go ahead and abandon my principles, and I'm going to vote this way, because everybody has this notion and this belief for the vast majority of the constituents that, well, if Hillary's elected and Trump's the only other nominee, he's the only choice we have. That's like, again, using the analogy you use, well, I'm going to put a revolver to my right temple because I already have a revolver to my left temple. So maybe if I can squeeze off the trigger and get the shot off on my right temple, that might be just a little bit less damaging, and it'll cause the left temple or the left revolver to not even fire. It just doesn't make any sense. How about this for a choice? How about choose the individual or the candidate that's running that is, not going to put you in a position where you have a gun to your head?
Well, they don't want to pay attention to that. They don't want to admit that that's even a possibility. And when you stop and think about it, they have been the ones that wanted to ignore all of the signs that we've been giving. They're the ones that wanted to sit there and say that he's big, he's huge, he's smart, intelligent, he built a tower. After all, that apparently is now the qualifications that people are looking for when they want to choose commander-in-chief. So, again, it just goes to show that the one thing that we've said ever since our premiere episode of taking people off over the friendly airwaves remains true, steadfast, stalwart, and unshifting, because we said that the key to unlocking all of the problems, to placing this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours back onto the path to prosperity, is going to require us to go back to basics, to go back to the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. It really is that simple. There is no other way around that. There's no way to sugarcoat that or candy coat that, but that's certainly what the graduates in Pavlov's School of Journalism, consolidating mainstream media, is going to try and do. They're going to try and rewrite this. They want to control the narrative, to spin it a certain way so that their dogmatic propagandistic agenda becomes a new norm in these United States of America. And again, that's something we've also warned about going back this past year. And it's hard to believe that we're almost up on that 1-year anniversary. But we have to be cognizant of the problems that we're facing, because it's not just going to go away. Trump is actually just a symptom of the greater disease that ails not just the Republican Party, but the entire body politique of the United States of America.
Well, yeah, and again, this goes right back to what we said before, pointing out the lying Trumpidians as being hypocrites and frauds. Because if you go back and look at the 2008 election cycle, it was the vast majority of these same individuals were saying, well, McCain's the nominee. We have to, we have to vote party lines. We have to vote party lines. And there are many of us that after that election had decided, you know what, never again. Never again will we vote for the Republican nominee just because of the letter next to their name or due to their opposition. And come 2012, it happened again. Now, I have this saying that I've developed, and I've mentioned it before. First time's a mistake. Second time or any time after that is a choice. See, in 2012, I didn't vote for the Republican nominee. Why? Because I didn't see any difference between Obama and Mitt Romney. I truly didn't. Except for one minor difference is Obama has not yet tried to take Americans' guns away from them and signed legislation to do so. Romney did 7 times as governor of Massachusetts. So in my book, that actually made him worse than Obama. Not to say that Obama wouldn't try and do that, because he most certainly will. It's just the timing wasn't there for him. He was not given that decree and that marching order to do so as of yet. So now we have it again in 2016. We have individuals saying, well, I was for Cruz, but he's not running, so I have no choice but to vote to keep Hillary out of office. Folks, here's the problem. The second Donald J. Trump threw his quaff into the ring, it automatically became an issue. It automatically became a vote for Hillary because Trump cannot beat her. He has no inclination of beating her. He doesn't want to. He has no desire. Why? Because he is going to make more money branding his name, as we've mentioned before, and several articles that have come out just over this past week and a couple of months. They're Johnny come lately to the party. We mentioned this almost a year ago, what his whole intentions were. So why is it that the media is now all of a sudden starting to, jump onto this when it's already been there? See, there's a lot going on, Randy, with the media. We're seeing things coming out. They're reporting things that we've already covered. We've already mentioned it.
And we said that would be the case. We
said
that they would be, ignoring this to try and get it to where Trump was the nominee. That's why they gave him 3 times as much airtime. That's why they gave him all of this free coverage. And in fact, what we see with respect to Bannon over there is something that Red State is right about when they said today that Trump again mistaken flattery for competence. That's literally how disconnected this man is from reality. He's going to sit there and say that Bannon is an intelligent one, that Bannon has a full understanding of what's going on in the campaign, and when in fact nothing could be further from the truth. He's a sycophantic yes man, but he's also being used as a patsy. This is all smoke and mirrors to try and drive attention away from Paul Manafort's Russian connections that we mentioned on that solo flight. Yeah, exactly. It's that idea of the monks coming out and saying that sort of thing. It's down to this. It's that they don't care about the truth. It's that they're trying to rewrite the truth. They are playing the same propagandistic game that Adolf Hitler's Minister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, had been doing all throughout the Second World War and even in the interwar period when he had gotten to that position. So we see that, as you said, the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media are wanting to twist this narrative and agenda to fit. And we said they would. We said that as soon as he got the nomination, and this really did kind of happen exactly how we predicted, in mere prophetic fashion, that they would turn on him, that they would attack him and claim that he was unfit when they had given him all that airtime.
Sure. And again, it came down to the point with one of the key prerequisites of instituting propaganda is timing. They ignored it the whole time. We were talking about it. We knew what was going to happen. We predicted what was going to happen. And they ignored it the whole time, at least put it out there, or didn't put it out there to the public. They kind of kept it, close to the vest. And then now the time hits. Now it's the timing for them to do this. Well, why is it that they wait for the timing? Again, because they follow right along with the propagandistic plan. Timing is everything. See, we here at the Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, there's no time like the present. When we come across information that's pertinent and we see how things are going with trends, with patterns, with just the obvious sense of situations, we bring it right to the forefront. Let's get it all out on the table and get it out of the way. And now I can see probably a year from now, Randy, regardless of how the election's going to go, the salivating mainstream media, they're going to say, oh, well, we reported on this and we told you this is going to happen. But yet here we are hovering on the winds. And we're going to be there to say, no, we warned about this before you did. And it's going to destroy all of their credibility.
We even gave you solutions.
Yes. Which people still have failed to realize. Again, with this whole Supreme Court thing, we explained why the Supreme Court nominations are a non sequitur or non starter in this election. Very simple. First and foremost point is the Supreme Court is a non sequitur now. They don't follow the Constitution now. What makes you think that having Trump in there to prevent Hillary from stacking the court in favor of the leftists and the Fabians, that they're going to follow the Constitution?
I'm going to tell you right now that Congress would fight Hillary Rotten Clinton much harder with respect to stacking the court than they ever would with Trump.
Sure.
Because it would, it would be that way. Now, sure, some of the Lion Branch Trumpidians would come forth and say that, well, if things go the way they're going now, then the Democrats are going to take control of Congress. And if they do, well, then, yeah, they may not fight Hillary that hard. But it means that the Republicans would at least give the token resistance that they have been giving Obama. But again, that's been so ineffectual. That's why we call them the gutless opposition party, or GOP. And it's really going to come down to that. They're not going to lift a finger against Trump because they're going to want to acquiesce to this tyranny of false unity that we have also warned about on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer.
So in other words, they're going to toe the line.
Sure. Now, that Dr. Alan Keyes at Barbed Wire penned an article that asks a significant question. And that question is whether conservatism can recover from the debacle of Trumpery. My answer is that it can. But we are going to have to distance ourselves from all things Trump. There really is no way around that. We cannot just get past that. That is something that we have also warned about on previous episodes. It's because Trump is trying to satiate and satisfy all of the monolithic caricatures, the two-dimensional caricatures that the left attempts to pigeonhole the right with here in America. From the phony war on women, from all of that crap, he ties into that. And of course, it has no place in an open, honest, and above all, free society like that of the United States of America. But you're not going to get that kind of coverage from the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, or the historical revisionists that infest the ivory tower of academia from coast to coast and border to border. They're going to double down on this false narrative that they've just been, creating for well over a century and a half now.
Well, then you know what they're going to do. And the way they're going to do this, and yet here comes another prophetic statement. When it backfires and it doesn't play out the way that they think it's going to, and it's not going to play out the way they want it to, instantly, what are they going to revert to? They're going to revert to the tactics that are used by, the Black Lives Matter organization and all those goons. They're going to start playing the victim card. Well, we weren't given a free chance, and this is a violation of the First Amendment, and blah, 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 and we weren't, you have been warned about this. You have been warned about this. We have pointed out time and time again how Trump has violated or has inclinations to violate the Constitution. That being specifically of the First Amendment, when he says he wants to open up arbitration and lawsuits and change the laws to where the libel laws to where, if somebody in the media says something bad against him, he could throw a Trumper tantrum and sue them. Why? So much for freedom of speech.
And it's because he is a litigious little man. He always
Sure,
has been. But you know
sure.
what it also says is Trump and his hostile takeover of the GOP will be a poison pill. And the
Mhm.
reason I say that is if you think about it objectively, under the totality of the circumstances, you will see that this is a propaganda goldmine for the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. We've oftentimes mentioned this on previous episodes, that they want to create this false perception, and that the false perceptions can matter and be more powerful than reality in the arena of American politics. So that's what it is. They want to control the narrative. They want to create this false dichotomy and perception. And by using that, they can then try and transform Trump into the Herbert Hoover of this era, essentially killing movement conservatism for generations. And folks, we are in such a tenuous and weak spot right here and right now as we sit here and speak into this microphone that we can ill afford that. We can't just go decades of allowing cultural and social Marxism to eke its way even further into the pillars of our society, because it will unravel the societal fabric of these United States of America. Mark my words, it absolutely will.
Well, what you're talking about there, Randy, is this false dichotomy, this false perception, and being utilized to its fullest extent. It goes back to the old saying that the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. And that's essentially what Trump has done. He has convinced the lying Trumpidians and all of his Trumplodites that he's not a Democrat. He's not a leftist. He's not this. He's not that. He's actually changed. He's the leopard that has changed its spots. I'm sorry, but leopards don't have spots, and the buffoons that actually believe this nonsensical drivel, their intellectual capacity is equivalent to the ovulation cycle of a gnat. It's non-existent. If they're willing to be duped that much, then they've already lost, because the Fabians will see that. They say, well, if we can dupe them this easily, most assuredly we can ramp things up and we can convince them to forfeit their constitutional rights and surrender them, all under the means of feeling safe.
And you know, since we are labeling this as the election cycle of betrayal, another good person who had been very strong in their sentiments against Trump has fallen by the wayside. Author Brad Thor says he'll support Trump, says he'll support him because Hillary is just that much worse. I'm sorry, Brad. You're right on a lot of things. This just ain't one of them. The whole thing that we see with Bannon is just another chapter of the betrayal that has become the hallmark of this election. Conservatives have been told that they're no longer welcomed in the GOP.
They're not wanted.
That we're not wanted. But let's stop and think about that for a moment. When was the last time that the GOP ever won a damn thing without movement conservatives? I'll give you a hint. Never. Never. You know, kind of like that root word to never Trump. Yeah. That thing that they don't seem to understand. That's the problem. They don't understand the term never. It's as though it's beyond their mental capacity. It's as though they are struggling to comprehend what it means. I'll tell you what it means. It means never. It means not in your lifetime, not in your children's lifetime, not in your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren's lifetimes.
No chance of existence, period.
No chance in hell.
And it comes in, I guess the only time that it could ever happen to where the gutless opposition parties ever won anything without conservative-based movements would be, I don't know, maybe in never Trump land.
Well, the one time would have been in 1860, but that doesn't count.
Well,
that's a different arena.
A whole different arena.
But what it shows is that, in fact, they haven't been able to win an election since 1964 without the vote of conservatism. And in this sense, Trump is attempting to obliterate the GOP, to reshape it in the image of an American Workers' Party. This is what the betrayal is bringing us as a nation and as a people. Now, do we really want to acknowledge that? Do we really want to turn to that? Do we really want to give credibility and credence to that? Because I don't think that that is a good image for the United States of America to embrace. I don't think that that is going to be beneficial to any of us. In fact, it is going to work to our great detriment in the grand scheme of things. But you see, that's the problem, Jeremy. They don't want to look at this in the totality of the circumstances. They don't want to look at it as a holistic picture.
No,
They're
instant
in the
gratification.
me, and instant gratification frame of mind. We've got to get past that. If we are ever to restore the United States of America back to the path to prosperity, we have got to get past this erroneous notion of instant gratification. The frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists who are hell-bent on the utter annihilation of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours did so meticulously. They did so tirelessly. They did so with patience. We have to have a 100-year plan. We honestly do.
Yeah, and we've also warned about the factor of patience. Back in 2009, Randy, you and I had conversations, and along with many other people, and a lot of people thought I was absolutely bonkers. Just I completely flipped my lid when Hillary vacated her seat as senator when she was nominated and appointed as Secretary of State. And I asked the people, I says, why would she do that? Why would she relinquish such an authoritarian position to where she had more authority to implement things and to progress the leftist and Fabian agenda, except for having the patience to do it to where it could be done with more incrementalization over that period of time. And then as soon as the opportunity presented itself, the 2016 presidential elections, she jumps into the running, like I said she would.
Of course.
And
she's greedy that way. She always has been.
Well, and that's people that are patient. People that are, patience is a virtue, says God. But here's the thing: when you have evil individuals like the Whore of Babylon, Hillary Clinton herself, and they're able to master the art of being patient, it creates such a demise for everybody, not just the sovereign citizens of the United States, but look at the citizenry of the world. Look at what could possibly happen, what may happen when she's elected in November. And when I say when she is elected, because she more than likely will be elected. The only way that Trump is going to be elected is if something happens to Hillary, they have nobody to put up in her stead, and Trump's going to win by default.
And it's interesting because one of the major complaints against Hillary Clinton is the corruption that exists within her campaign.
Yes.
The chief areas of this corruption concerns illegal foreign campaign financing that was orchestrated through her now infamous Clinton Foundation.
Yep.
Now, you know what the Lion Branch Trumpidians will do is they'll ignore the fact that Cheeto Jeebus donated over $100,000 to that very foundation. However, the hypocrisy becomes palpable when the truth concerning Manafort's undisclosed foreign lobbying reaches the surface. He is just as corrupt as Hillary. There's no other way around that. He truly is just as corrupt as Hillary Clinton, and that's unacceptable. It's an untenable situation that they are placing us in. It plays directly into the propagandistic agenda, the Fabian agenda of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. And folks, this is why we have been going out of our way to warn you about the dangers of Cheeto Jeebus.
Paul Manafort, that guy's a real piece of work. He's got all these connections. This Russian fandango of this Purple Triangle man love club that he has with all of these investors, works out all these shady deals, utilizes them. See, he really is a great propagandist. because the individuals that he's associated with, guess what? They're the ones who took the fall. They're the ones that he sets them up behind their backs to take the fall when things go awry. He walks out unscathed and declares plausible deniability and says, well, you can't touch me. I'm immune from this because I'm associated with this and this and this now. And it doesn't work that way. But it comes down to that being the case where it is working that way because of the feckless and gutless individuals that don't want to hold people accountable.
Well, we've already talked about the way he's been on in the Ukraine.
Yep.
Why would this not raise concerns within the GOP? Oh, I have the answer. It's because they've decided that they'd rather have a fraud like Trump or to fall to defeat to Hillary than to be held accountable for their own generations-long betrayal of their electorate and base. Again, they are mostly to blame for the rise of the New York Vulgarian. But this goes even deeper. It shows that there really is no difference between Trump and Hillary, that they are both equally corrupt, they both have equal amounts of connections and favors to hold and pay and repay with Russia and other nefarious groups. Now, folks, it doesn't take a rocket surgeon like Dr. Ben I'm a Victim Carson to figure out that Russia is not looking out for the best interests of the United States of America. And I know that I have a dear, dear friend whom I think the world of, who thinks that we need to have a true alliance with Russia. No, we don't. It didn't work in World War II. The Russians are always manipulative. They are always self-centered. They are always self-serving. So it would be detrimental to us. It would work against us in every nook and cranny, in every facet imaginable.
And I was just going to raise the question, when has Russia ever had our best interest even in their thoughts and minds?
Never.
They never have. So if they've never had our interests at heart or in their thoughts or even thinking about the best interest of the United States, because, well, we have to get with the United States, and maybe
you Americaninskis.
Create some man love, get the man love from Russia because it makes you strong like bull crap.
Yeah.
If they never had that inkling in their thoughts or even on their lips and the tips of their tongues, what makes people think that they'll have it now? Well, they won't.
If we can take away one lesson from the 2016 election, it's that the tired trope of the lesser of two evils can finally be buried for the erroneous notion that it is, and let it decay in peace. And it has always been an erroneous notion. With this corruption exposed with respect to Manafort, the resurgent inquires whether he is the reason behind the Trump camp's shakeup, choosing Bannon from Trump Bart News. I certainly wouldn't put it past him. I certainly think that would correlate with what they've done before. They've done it with Corin Lewandowski. They've done it with him before.
It fits right in with his MO. Again, Manafort is a great propagandist. He really, truly is. So he's the architect behind all of this. What does he have to gain? See, that's what we need to be looking at. What does Paul Manafort...
$7 million from the Ukraine.
Which isn't a drop in the bucket compared to the assumed and grossly inflated with Aquanet hairspray, the big hair inflated 80s type of inflated big hair net worth of the Trumpster. Yeah. But all the same, $12.7 million. I don't know, Randy. That, to me, that's...
We call it motive. We call that motive.
Yes. But see, I don't know about you. Well, actually, I do know about you. But here's the thing. $12.7 million, we'd never have to work the rest of our lives, Randy. We'd never have to do anything. We would... Hell, we'd be able to run the show 24/7 without any issues. Without any issues.
Yeah, and it's an interesting question that the resurgent raised. For it's not the first time. We've seen the Trump camp drop the axe on personnel after scandals swirled around one of their own. Recall that Corin Lewandowski had been sacrificed after things went awry. Now, mind you, Trump is very slow moving on this sort of thing, but the stakes are higher now. Nonetheless, I think that Bannon won't be enough to salvage this destructive and immoral candidacy.
Well, no, it was doomed from the beginning. And I think that was, again, the whole entire plan. That was their agenda. You know, and we know that Trump has this throughout this whole campaign. There's three things that he's talked about doing. He's talked about winning, always winning, always winning. You're gonna win big. You know, we're gonna win again, and making money. He's going to make people rich. He's going to do this and that. Well, how did that work with Trump?
He did.
And then the other thing, to tie it all together, to kind of schmooze it over, to give it kind of a good, fluffy, butterfly in your tummy feel, we're going to make America great again.
Yep.
Fraud after fraud after fraud, compounding lie after compounding lie. It never ends. And once they begin that Trumper coaster of a disaster, it will never stop until everybody that is in its path and on board is completely destroyed.
And that's always been the way that they've operated.
Sure.
It's always been the way that Trump has operated. Trump has always been about himself and only himself.
Well, he's even admitted as such.
Of course. He said, I've always been greedy, but now I'm greedy for the country. Except that it's not our country that he's greedy for. It's not the country that we know and love. It's not the longest contiguous running federalist, constitutionally endowed representative republic in the entire course of human events that he's greedy for. Because he's shown that he's diametrically opposed to that. He's shown that he has no interest in it, that he has found no intrinsic or inherent value
of it.
And of course, 12th article? There is no 12th article in that 7-article document.
Well, it was written by the two Corinthians. It was written by the two
Of
Corinthians.
course. But, you know, the stakes here are higher now than ever. And we must be vigilant, just as our founding fathers expected us to be. We have to be the ones that are the watchmen for our liberty, the protectors of our liberty. We are the only ones endowed with that power and authority from on high. And that was what was so amazing and revolutionary about what our founding fathers handed to us 235 years ago. It truly was, truly is. No other nation on earth has managed to create as secure, as free, as open, and honest as our founding fathers did. It speaks volumes to their infinite wisdom and foresight. And, you know, I don't think Bannon is going to be enough to salvage this destructive and immoral candidacy. Jeremy, there's another aspect of the betrayal we must address too, though. The betrayal shown by the people who once claimed to be stalwart conservatives. You and I have both lost friends over this election cycles. Families have been torn asunder by the scorched earth policies and tactics implemented by the mafioso quafioso. Bitterness has reached an all-time high. And we're more divided now than ever. And who do we blame? Partially ourselves, but we need to blame those who bought into this erroneous quip, again, of fear. People like Brad Thor. He's still good. I still like him. I still admire him. But he is now partially to blame for what's going on here. He capitulated to the Trumpian.
Well, I mean, we can even take individuals like Sean Hannity. I mean, prior to this election, you know, Sean Hannity was always talking about, you know, the Constitution. You know, during this election, I haven't heard him say boo one about the constitutional validity of Trump.
Well, that's because there is no constitutional validity of Trump.
Correct. And we pointed this out. We pointed out he's not even capable of taking the oath. If you cannot swear in good conscience to uphold, protect, and defend the United States Constitution as President of the United States to the best of your ability, again, we have to look at the key word there, ability. Ability comes from having the expertise or the knowledge or the understanding of something in order to implement said tactic or said thing, experience and knowledge. If he doesn't see any value in the Constitution, doesn't even understand it or even know it, to know that there is no 12 articles to the Constitution, how can he have any kind of ability to exhibit it or exercise it?
He can't. That's the tragic truth of it, that he can't. Yeah. He can't. And so we know that families have been divided. We know that people have been pitted against one another. But if we are actually ever going to get this this nation back onto the path of prosperity, we have got to stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity to unify and unite around the only thing that we, in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty, are called to unite around. That of our Constitution. Yeah. Nothing else, no one else, nothing else matters. And 6-2 or fight.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. They're going to try and say, well, we came up with the whole concept of the unity and this and that. Well, no. You may have utilized the term, but guess what? That's like somebody utilizing the term gay. You're using it in a bastardized way to subvert and pervert the true meaning of it. They want to utilize unity for what? To achieve
a tyranny of false unity.
To create a tyranny of false unity and to achieve their own means and agenda. Whereas you and I and several of our cherished first-class passengers, and before I say anything else, I do want to welcome aboard freaking Beacon Magula. Okay, a friend of ours, mutual friend of ours on Facebook, and the guy's really conservative. We had this conversation about even bringing him on, which we'll be more than happy to do. But we had to give him a title. We had to give him a name, a position, much like our first Air Marshal Nelson Ward, while we have the freaking Beacon John Joseph Magula. So we'll get him on one of our episodes soon, folks. But the thing is, he understands what unity is. He understands the purpose of the unity, unifying behind our Constitution. Why? Because the first three words are "we the people." You can't have unity unless you have those to unite. And we the people, the ultimate wielders of sovereignty, if we're not existent, if we cannot unify with ourselves around our Constitution, how are we going to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and teach it to our posterity, which we are obligated to do? We are obligated to make this republic a more perfect union for our posterity. We are to take something that has been given to us, improve upon it, and pass it on.
Well, they don't understand that, and they don't understand that you have to be meticulous, particularly when you're facing a political foe, a political ideology that is so diametrically opposed to this constitutionally endowed representative republic of ours. We have to be stalwart. That's the thing. They politicize everything. We don't. Maybe it's time we start using and utilizing the Constitution in everything, because it truly is such a guiding beacon. It truly is such an unwavering force of good and freedom in this world that it has been the greatest saving light for so many people. It has been a beacon to encourage people to strive for their natural inclinations of freedom and liberty. You can't have it any other way. That is once again, the infinite wisdom and foresight of our founding fathers. They understood that was the quintessential aspect of what it needed to occur for a people to be free. And if you look, we really have had the longest contiguous or uninterrupted running constitutionally endowed representative republic in the entire course of human events. No other nation on God's green earth can claim such a magnificent accomplishment in their course of history. And so in our relatively brief yet illustrious history, we have accomplished some pretty staggering and amazing things.
And that stands to testify as true testimonial that when you say maybe we should just start using the Constitution in everything we do, well, See, that's the cosmic gaff to the whole thing. That's the whole gag. The Constitution is in everything that we do. Every walk of life, everything that every sovereign citizen of the United States does within their lives all rolls right back and funnels down to one key point: the United States Constitution. Because let's face it, you would not be able to have the ability to bargain and negotiate for your wages, for your employment, if it wasn't for the Constitution. You wouldn't be able to own a home if it wasn't for the Constitution. You wouldn't be able to defend yourself and your family if it wasn't for the Constitution. And all of these things are nothing more than statements of testimony that these are inalienable rights. They are endowed to us at birth by our Creator. Without those things, we do not have a Constitution, because, as the preamble to the Bill of Rights so adamantly stipulates, those carry the full force, weight, and effect as the supreme law of the land.
Indeed, that's what Article 5 says as well.
Yes.
And you know, in the wake of all of this betrayal, we must reevaluate what it is that is of paramount importance in this country. Despite everything Trump has done, it hasn't changed the fact that the way to restore America to the path to prosperity is to return to strict adherence to the fundamental tenets contained in the four corners of the Constitution. If anything, this election cycle has fully demonstrated that not only has this not changed, but it has become all the more important that we go back to strict adherence to the clear and concise language of the Constitution. Nobody else can do that. No one else is prepared to do that. No one else is endowed with the wherewithal and the authority by God Almighty to do this. That is our burden. That is our responsibility, and our responsibility alone. It's why we have taken such exception to when Trump tries to sit there and say everything's negotiable. No, 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 no. Our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights are not negotiable. They're non-delegable, and they cannot be taken away without due process under the law. But Trump has tried to do that. Hillary Rotten Clinton will certainly do that. And so we are at the point now where we must simply admit that neither one of the two titular candidates for the two mainstay political parties are acceptable. Because it's not that we give our loyalty or allegiance to one singular entity or individual or governmental branch or political philosophy other than the supreme law of the land. It's that we support the Constitution. That and that alone is what carries our loyalty.
And we understand that, Randy, but the lying Trumpidians, they're perfectly happy to raise their hand and swear loyalty to Donald Trump.
Of course.
At the drop of a hat, or the drop of a dandruff flake, or comb, or whatever the case is.
Okay.
Yeah. It's priorities have to be realigned. And that is one of the biggest problems that our country has faced. It's one of the most damaging problems. And again, this is all done through the Fabian agenda, through incrementalization, revisionist history, political correctness, moral relativism, all combined. It has led us to this point to where we, the people, have lost sight of our priorities. See, every single one of these lying Trumpidians, if you were to ask them straight on, face to face, if it came down to it, would you be willing to trade your life for the protection of your family?
They'd say no.
Wholeheartedly, Randy, I think if put in that position and caught off guard, they would say yes, but then they would add a caveat to it. Yeah, but Trump. Because, see, it's still there. I still believe that the core root of individualism still resides even within the lying Trumpidians. Okay? They're blinded by this hatred and this fear and this anger that has been bolstered up. It's been concocted in this cauldron, this cloth cauldron called the Trump campaign, to where the fumes that are steaming from it have intoxicated them. Well, folks, this is what we need to go through. This is what our country has to suffer through. We need some severe rehabilitation and detoxing We have to detox ourselves from these poisons. Okay, it's kind of like, a heroin user. They go through withdrawals. They have the shakes, they have the itches, they go through nausea, vomiting, this and that, headaches, the whole gamut. And more often than not, they revert back to trying to achieve that supreme ultimate high that they first got when they began using. See, this is what the lying Trumpidians are trying to do now. They got a dose of this opiate shot from the Trump campaign, and it gave them such a rush and such a high that now they're doing everything that they can to achieve that at all costs. They've lost sight of everything else.
Well, of course
They've
they
lost
have.
sight of their
Of
priorities.
course they have. And if anything, this election cycle shows and has fully demonstrated that not only are we facing this problem, it's gotten worse because they don't value the Constitution anymore either. They think that Trump is some great thing. This is why it is so important for all of us to foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution and thereby our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. In the face of such betrayal and corruption, it is important to have steadfast pillars of society. That steadfast pillar has always been and continues to be the Constitution. It is unwavering. It is based off of those natural law tenets which, by their very nature, are timeless, meaning they're just as applicable today as they were 235 years ago, as God willing they will be 235 years from now. Bannon is just the latest chapter of the betrayal that has become the hallmark of the 2016 election. Conservatives have been told they're no longer welcomed here. No longer are we welcomed here. And what it is that we cannot betray the principle of freedom. We cannot become like those who have engaged in this rank corruption and betrayal. And what they demonstrate is that they don't understand us. People like Lush Bimbo want to claim that we don't understand what's going on, that we're just part of the establishment, or that we're not patriotic if we don't support Trump. What they miss is that we're not loyal to a person, a party, or even a so-called political ideology. We're loyal to the natural law as it is encoded in the greatest social compact or contract ever devised by the hands of men, yet divinely inspired by providence above. We are the watchmen of our liberty. We defend it, and we are the only ones who can do this and stand up to oppression and betrayal. And that's why the Lion Branch Trumpidians are beginning to hate the Constitution. It's because they fully recognize, they are fully cognizant of the fact that we're standing up to them, that we won't just bow down to them, that we won't hand over this nation that we love to them because it is not their nation to destroy. Yes, it does belong to them in their individual capacity as popular sovereigns, but remember what we have also stated, something that goes straight to the heart of what the United States of America has always been about, and that is this, that it belongs to all of us, and that if you start to encroach upon the rights of your fellow popular sovereign, then that is when you are adjudicated to lose those rights or to have those rights encroached upon or abridged or belittled because you have recklessly exercised them.
And people like Lush Bimbo, the whole thing is they want to say, well, you don't understand this and you don't understand that, you don't understand what it means. Well, here's the thing. Why is it so acceptable for someone like Lush Bimbo and Sean Wannedy to say these things, but at the same time, it's completely okay to disregard what you and I say? Is it because they're on national TV or national radio? Is it because they have that kind of social stature? What makes them experts and the end all to be all and the final say so when it comes to things? Because of their social status, because of their celebrity nuances and acknowledgments. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm the type of individual when somebody tells me that I have to do this, I always ask the question, why? Why do I have to accept what Lush Bimbo and Sean Wannity say as the truth in the gospel? Is it that what I say is not acceptable? Do I not have the freedom of speech? Do I not have the wherewithal to make sense of this? Not in their mind.
Not in their mind.
So in other words, it's do as they say, but not as they do. And
it's hypocrisy.
It's hypocrisy, but it's the elitism. They think because
hypocrisy. Elitism is hypocrisy.
Sure. It's because he's on Fox News that I should just go ahead and accept what he says. Why?
To hell with Quaff News. You know,
to hell with all of them. They can all go to hell because you know what? What I have to say in the eyes and ears and minds of other individuals who know how to think for themselves and have the capability of doing so, why should what we say be disregarded as nonsense or well, you're just a bunch of never Trumpers and yeah, but Trump, you know what? It's beyond past. Their whole auspice, they still, Randy, these lying Trumpidians can still not, they still cannot formulate a coherent and cogent response to being asked, what part of Never Trump do you not understand? They want to say, well, you're just a Cruz bot. They always seem to revert back to saying we're followers and subjects of Cruz. This is not about Ted Cruz. It never was about Ted Cruz.
It's about something far greater. It's about the supreme law of the land. And pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution, what is known in the common vernacular as the Supremacy Clause, that is the supreme law of the land. That's the only law that matters. It's why we have so oft times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence Night Flyer that the only litmus test that matters in any given election cycle is the Constitution. And it reminds me of something that our first Air Marshal, Mr. Nelson Ward, had spoken with me about today, how he's saying that in the state of Arizona, there is this kind of rule that's in place that if you try and do a write-in candidate, they're just going to throw away the entire ballot, thereby infringing upon your 15th Amendment right to vote. This has got to come to an end. And so what he suggested, and I agree, is that you should take a photograph of your ballot, your write-in ballot, when you go in to vote. And that way, if they say that Trump got 100% of the vote there or got a vast majority of the vote, then we can move forward with a class action, legal action, as is necessary, because what they are doing is they are acting in an illegitimate fashion. They are attempting to encroach and abridge and belittle your fundamental and inalienable God-given right to vote. Well, that cannot be allowed to come to fruition. That is not who we are as either a nation or as a people. But you see, it requires that we be proactive. It requires that we be vigilant. We must be the ones that are stalwart towards this. We must be the ones that are ready to stand up for it because nobody else can do it. Truly, no one else can do this.
Now, going back with what I was saying, Randy, about questioning, why do we have to listen to these individuals and take what they say as the gospel? Many individuals will say, well, that applies to you and Randy as well. Why should we have to listen to what you say? Well, see, we're perfectly fine with you asking that question because we can answer that question. Because everything that we say and what we have been saying for the past year or so has been rooted in the confines of our natural law tenets in the Constitution. Everything we've said has been backed up and has been proven. We have an understanding and workable knowledge of the Constitution. Therefore, we are able to utilize it and make our points and stand firm on our points. We can back up what we say. Whereas Sean Wannity, if someone was to ask him, what constitutional validity does Trump have to even take the oath of office? He can't answer that question. He can't answer it. So again,
it's not that he can't, it's that he doesn't want to.
Well, no, I honestly, I don't think he can. I don't think he can. I think his mind has been so clouded with the venereal excrement storm that he's stuck his head in, that he's void of being able to answer it. He's void from being able to answer it because he won't allow himself to. It's not that he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to because that's the only way he can capitulate to his own emotions, because his emotions dictate his logic. That's what it is. Our emotions don't dictate our logic. Are we angry? Absolutely. But we take our emotions and we put them aside. We bury them in a mason jar in the backyard, and we deal strictly with truth and fact and absolutes, because everything we say is rooted in and based on the supreme law of the land. It has been backed up time and time again, and it is irrefutable.
Yes, it is, and it has to be, because when you stop and look at the way that they're trying to redefine us as a nation and as a people, it is playing directly into the game of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists who have been hell-bent on destroying this nation. And so, again, this is why it is so important to foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution, and thereby your fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Because then, and only then, can you truly see through this web of deception that they have woven. Then you can stand up for your rights. You can say no, that you do not have the wherewithal and the ability to fundamentally transform this constitutionally endowed representative republic into some dark, twisted, nefarious, Fabian socialist Orwellian dystopia. Because literally, socialism goes against the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of the United States Constitution, and therefore it is void ab initio, meaning that it is without the impact or force of binding law from the very beginning. That is what we have to do. That is what we have to stand up for. But of course, the Lion Branch Trumpidians don't want to consider that. They don't want to think that there is something greater than themselves, that there is something that is by its nature timeless, which, of course, as we have so oft times reiterated here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, is the natural law tenets. They are timeless. They're greater than each and every one of us in our own individual capacities. That is why we are called upon to stand up for, to defend, to promote and advance our rights so that posterity may enjoy and exercise those rights to an even greater ability than we ourselves were able to do so.
Well, they don't want, because it would be an instantaneous defeat for them. It would automatically prove that A, they were wrong, that they've capitulated to lie after lie, they've exacerbated situations, and they've perpetuated the lies. So it's a classical syndrome of when you...
We're fading out here, folks. So what we're going to try and say there, I think what he was trying to get at is that they are just so caught up in their own egos, in their own lies, in their own inability to see the truth, that they have forgotten the truth. They've forgotten what it is to be a rugged individual. And rugged individualism is a quintessential characteristic and nature and aspect of what it means to be a popular sovereign in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. You know, it is through self-responsibility and self-accountability that you ultimately become self-determinate. And is that not what matters to us? Self-determination and free will, consent of the governed, one of those old natural law tenets that trace themselves back to Magna Carta that was signed in the summer of 1215 on the field of Runnymede? I think so. And it's just as applicable today as it was back then, if not even more so.
Well, it's more adamant. There's more of a need for it now because of the way things have progressed due to the Fabian agenda. We have to look at it more, and the more that the Fabian agenda grows and festers, it seems that the more people are running away from it, and they're doing so out of fear. They're afraid to acknowledge what the truth is regarding the fundamental tenets of natural law and our shared constitution. They're afraid of the truth. They are afraid that they've lived such a long lie even with this campaign, this short campaign season that it's been so far, just over a year, even that is too long for them to say, you know what was I thinking? Why did I believe this? Why was I perpetuating this? I need to turn over a new leaf. See, at that point, that moment of clarity and reality, that impact in somebody's life, that is when people are able to change. That is what true change is all about. It occurred with me in 2008 when I heard John McCain give his concession speech and saying that Barack Obama, who was actually a nice guy, he, is very level-headed, this, that, and he's this, he's that. Again, I vomited. I got so sick that I actually vomited. That was my moment of clarity. It's like I went through that detox process. Okay? So that, again, that's what this country needs. We need a severe intervention and detoxing of this opiate known as the lesser of two evils.
And it's because it's such a weak crutch. It's such a weak crutch that doesn't stand for anything. It ignores our values. It ignores all that we hold near and dear. It basically perpetuates this slide to the left. Why is it that the culture, despite electoral victories of conservatism, continues to slide further to the left? Well, it's because the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists have infiltrated our institutions of education from coast to coast and border to border. They've infiltrated our information media sources and outlets. They have just essentially thrown their weight into all of the pillars of society that help shape the up-and-coming generations, and indeed those generations which have yet to be born. And so we can't just sit idly by and allow that to continue. And of course, we can't just change it overnight. We have also got to eradicate this notion that we are going to achieve instant gratification. Now, I can understand why conservatives are feeling as though they ought to achieve instant gratification. It's because we understand that truth and the natural law and the natural order of things is on our side. But that is no longer justification enough. It's not going to be powerful enough in and of itself per se to persuade people to move away from the twisted Fabian socialist agenda. For the past century and a half now, they have essentially been allowed to entrench themselves in the societal fabric of the United States, and they are acting like an acidic thing. They are disintegrating the individual fibers of the societal fabric of the United States. In other words, we the people, and our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. And of course, this is the type of coverage and approach and thought pattern and process that Sean Hannity won't cover, because he hasn't thought about it that deeply. I've never really thought that Sean was much of a deep thinker, and certainly this 2016 presidential election cycle seems to cement that for me, to cement that position for me.
Sure. And again, it goes back to the whole point of they don't want the reality of truth to set them free. See, these individuals, oh, well, freedom this and freedom that, they don't want to be free. They truly don't want to be free. They don't want to understand the truth. It's that old saying, the truth shall set you free. All they have to do is embrace it. They don't want to embrace it because they will be forfeiting and giving up everything that they've built up for themselves, their lifestyle, their whole auspice of existing, their comfort zone. See, they're sitting in this little dinghy of a boat, and the waves are crashing into them, and everything's fine as long as, the boat's staying afloat and they're still inside of it. They're okay. We can weather the storm of, conservatives, calling us to the carpet about this because, we have our paddle and our sails called Never Trump, except for the fact that the tidal wave, the tsunami known as the United States Constitution, is barreling down on you, and it's going to capsize your boat. It's not going to just rock it and give you some, seasickness and motion sickness. It's going to capsize it. And at that point, when your boat is capsized, when your life is turned upside down and yanked with the undertow, You have to decide right then and there, at this point in time, are you going to sink or are you going to swim? I'm all for capsizing people's boats in this regard because we need that kind of a whitewash and cleansing.
Yeah, and it's going to take a lot to start pushing this nation back onto the path of prosperity. Because, again, the answer, and clearly the 2016 election proves this even more so, is found in the Constitution. And you see that so many people are discontented with what's happening with this election cycle thus far. They're discontented with the way that things are going, and it is all rooted in the fact that none of the mainstay candidates, even that idiot who claims to be a libertarian, are standing up for the Constitution. They're all moving for some unacceptable notion of totalitarianism.
Mm-hmm.
But that is diametrically opposed to all that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. Again, it comes back to, if we are going to be a free people, if we are going to be a liberty-loving nation as we were intended and designed to be, going back to the very inception of this sacred republic, then it has got to be rooted in the natural law tenets that are by themselves timeless. That means freedom, that means self-accountability, that means self-determination, that means having that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution. Because through that becomes the mechanism by which you are able to stand up for and to defend all your other rights. Everything else is penultimate. Everything else is much less significant in comparison to your rights. Because if you lose your rights, if you lose your liberty, you're left with nothing. The government can control your life. The government can dictate how you live, what you do, whether you live or die. And I'm not going to stand for that. You're not going to stand for that. Our first Air Marshal, Mr. Nelson Ward, won't stand for that.
Well, that's why we say 6-2 or fight. Because when it comes to that point, that's absolutely the only recourse we have. It's either you follow the Constitution, adhere to it, and abide by it, and create laws in accordance of it, or we're going to meet you with the only thing that's going to stop you. 6-2 or fight. It's our sworn obligation as citizens when we are born as citizens of the United States, and even those who come to this country and are naturalized under our laws, you have essentially taken that oath. It is a silent oath, is what people don't understand. A silent oath to maintain this republic. And when it becomes so destructive of the means of infringing upon life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and property, and tearing down our shared Constitution, it is our obligation with that silent oath to throw off those tyrannical hands and tactics and regimes and restore and reinstitute a governance that is applicable and based on those rooted fundamental principles. We have no other choice. Folks, I'm not advocating and I'm not calling for a complete call to arms and a complete overthrow of the United States government. I'm not doing that. But all I'm saying is, don't discount that from having to be a possibility in order to preserve and maintain our republic, because it is, again, our obligation to do so. That is part of being vigilant.
And if we hadn't been willing to go to those links at the very beginning, if that had not been something that our founding fathers were willing to do, this nation would have never become an independent entity.
It would never be great.
Never gained our sovereignty. We would have never been the free people that we are now. And so it is on us. The onus of responsibility and obligation is squarely upon our shoulders and on our shoulders alone, because the Constitution doesn't belong to the government. It doesn't belong to the various candidates. It belongs to we the people in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. No one else has that, nor should anyone else ever have that, because if you try and seek out some messianic figure descending out of providence on a quaff-shaped cloud with gold-tinted dandruff flakes, it's not going to turn out well. Your 30 pieces of dandruff are not going to buy you liberty. Only
No.
the bloodshed of our forefathers and our ancestors, and those who have been willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice by donning the uniform of their nation and standing up for our freedoms and liberties, have secured that. But in turn, we are expected to ensure that no internal turmoil, no internal strife can rise to threaten the sanctity of our sacred way of life, of our liberties, of our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. That duty, obligation, and above all responsibility falls on us, just as with any freedom and liberty. There's always a couch duty, obligation, and responsibility to proactively maintain, secure, safeguard, and promote the exercise of our rights is our solemn vow. It is our solemn duty. It is our responsibility. And again,
Yes.
it's no one else's. It's ours and ours alone.
And was speaking to the individuals who have, you know, all gave some, but some gave all. With respect to the individuals who have given everything for their country, including their lives, if they're willing to do that for us, we as sovereign, ultimate wielders of sovereignty in sovereign individuals, we have to be willing to do that for them. Because why should they bear the burden and the brunt of protecting our freedoms and liberties? See, that's not to say that everybody should go out and put on a uniform and serve in our nation's military in order to serve our country. See, I've battled with this very scenario for a long, long time, and it weighed heavily on my heart. And now I understand. And I always regretted the decision of not going into the military. But I understand it now because it wasn't meant for me to be. Okay. What was meant for me to be is doing what I'm doing right here, right now. See, this is how I serve my country, by bringing the educational aspect and by bringing the Constitution to the forefront for all of our cherished passengers and listeners, and to anybody else that I come across throughout my daily activities. That's how I serve my country, and that is what was endowed for me. That was the plan for me. I see that now. So no longer do I have any regret of not wearing the uniform. I have no regret for not wearing the uniform because I am serving my country in the capacity that is best suited for me. And the Constitution is my uniform.
It is the very guiding light, the principle that defines us as a nation and as a people. It is that characteristic law of freedom. And that is why we must be so vigilant in maintaining it, in safeguarding it, in promoting it. People like Donald Trump, people like Hillary Rotten Clinton, people like the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, they don't understand this. They don't care to understand it. They want to annihilate it. They want to eradicate it from the face of God's green earth. This is why they're so dangerous. This is why they are so nefarious. This is why we must be stalwart in our staunch resistance to them, because if we do not, they will do everything within their power to erase it, to make sure that it was all done in vain, to make sure that it is not a quintessential part of who we are anymore. And we can't afford to allow that to happen, particularly when you consider that the United States of America right now, as I sit here and speak into this microphone, is in the midst of an identity crisis coupled with a slew of constitutional crises. We have to rectify that, and only we can rectify that.
Sure. Yeah. It's our obligation. It's our silent oath as citizens. No, not everybody has spoken the words to uphold, protect, and defend the United States Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. See, not everybody has to. That's another realization I came to. And again, I'm not going to disparage people for not joining the military. I'm not going to do it. Okay? I don't have the right to do that. If people don't want to join the military to serve their country, okay. That doesn't mean that they're not capable of serving their country in other ways. Now, are there individuals that have no regard for the United States that are citizens? Absolutely. These individuals, can and will be dealt with when the time comes. because they're going to cast aside and become enemies of the United States, domestic enemies. I mean, we've seen it. Look at what was his name, Adam Godin.
Mm-hmm.
You had Adam Godin. You have the individual that, where was it, down in Florida with that shooting down there in Florida. You know, saying, you know, chanting Allahu snack bar, Aloha snack bar, or whatever the hell it was. Point blank said, you know, I no longer hold allegiance as citizen of the United States. At that point in time, he became a declared enemy of the United States, a domestic enemy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to condemn people for not wearing the uniform. I'm not going to condemn people for not serving in the military. However, I will say this. The individuals out there that have served in the military and they want to use that to lord over other people and diminish them because they don't like the message that these individuals are bringing to them. And they say, well, I wore the uniform. I did this and I did that, blah, blah, blah. You have no right to say anything. You're just an idiot. Well, guess what? You have now soiled that uniform. You have tarnished your oath. You hold no validity and no credibility whatsoever to tell me what to think, how to think, and what to say. And just because you disagree with me, fine. I don't want people to agree with me 100% of the time. Hell, Randy, you and I don't even agree 100% of the time. If I found somebody...
9mm loving, yeah.
Yes, well, yeah, whatever.
Uh-huh.
The point is, if I surrounded myself with people who agreed with me in everything I said 100% of the time, folks, I would be missing out. I would be an empty individual. I might as well sit in front of a mirror and talk to myself and never associate with anybody else.
So you'd be Trump, in other words. Okay.
Yeah, okay. I don't... Yeah. This is Jeremy. Jeremy doesn't associate with anybody else. Trump doesn't like to associate with anybody else unless he can swindle them out of things. Jeremy doesn't really like to be Trump, but at this point, he is. Don't be like Jeremy. Don't be like Trump. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
And to me, that would actually be a clinical case of insanity. Because you're sitting, if an individual does that and wants somebody to agree with them 100% of the time, completely ignores and relegates everybody who disagrees with him out of the question as having no relevance and always trying to... It's insane.
Yeah, it shows that they have a lack of knowledge themselves.
Yes.
It shows that they have a lack of respect for the marketplace of ideas. And of course, that's the one thing that we've always said about the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. They've always been opposed to the ability for people to think, act, and speak for themselves. You see, that's what's so great and beautiful about the United States of America, is that we have the ability to think for ourselves, to speak for ourselves. We have the freedom to express ourselves as we see fit. And that was something that was truly revolutionary, something that had not been seen anywhere else on the face of the earth. And again, it's why we have to stand up for it and defend it. It's why we have to be vigilant, as we always have been, at least here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. And folks, that is why we come here and produce these shows. It's to empower you. It's to give you the ability to stand up for your rights, your freedoms, your liberty. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. I guarantee you she won't betray you, because we've already told her if she tried that, we're going to push her out of the plane.
Yes.
As always, folks, yes, I'm your captain, Randy Wright. I want to thank you for joining us here. I've always been joined by my first officer there, Jeremy Grapington. We want to thank you for flying with us. We invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns you may have either here on our YouTube page or our Facebook page. And on top of that, we invite you to follow us on Twitter with the Twitter handle @RadioAviationEX. One more time, folks, that's @RadioAviationEX. And there you will find the departure board that lists both Jeremy and yours truly's personal Twitter accounts, the Blogspot account that has our audio blogs and other useful information on it, and then there is the Cafe Press account. Go ahead and tell them a little bit about that.
Well, a little bit about it. Trinkets, novelties. Yes, we Actually, I think there might even be mirrors or something. I'm sure there's somewhere in there. Uh, a lot of cool gifts, ideas, and whatnot for your loved ones, your friends, families, so on and so forth. And folks, again, uh, we're not really looking to do this to, you know, capitalize on this. Although capitalism is a great thing, but we want you to be able to have the wherewithal to stand firm in your convictions, stand on your principles and your conscience. And if our novelties, contribute to that, great. We're happy to oblige.
As always, folks, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Do take care.